everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. I haven't done an art tips, tricks, and hacks video for you for a little while, so I will be doing that today, showing you how to create really fine lines with watercolor. But before I get into that, I would like to encourage you to visit my website, CoreyFrankCreates.com. If you go there and scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can sign up for my email newsletter, which I send out once a week. And after you sign up for my email newsletter, you also get free access to my Graphite Basics course, which will get you started with pencil drawing. So I would love it if you go check that out. Again, CoreyFrankCreates.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, enter your name, email, subscribe, and then check your inbox or junk folder for a confirmation link. Once you click that, you get access to that Graphite Basics course, and you'll get a sort of email update from me once a week. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this video. The first type of brush I'm going to talk about is a flat brush. So you see here I have two different kinds, one that is the straight edge, one that is the slanted edge, but they're still ultimately in a straight line, not like a rounded brush. So you can see when they're wet and you kind of bring them to a fine tip, it's a very, very straight line, very fine line, and we're going to take advantage of that edge, that flat edge, to make fine lines. So I have my watercolor palette here. I'm going to use the Payne's Gray. You can see I already pre-wet it. And I'm just gonna dip my brush in there. And admittedly, I may have gotten the brush a little too wet. I wanted to really load it up with paint, and I had perhaps put a little too much water in the watercolor pan. So it was a little more diluted than I wanted because I wanted a nice dark color. But so you're gonna dip your paintbrush in whatever color paint you want. You're gonna kind of bring it along the edge, try and bring your brush back to a fine tip, which didn't work quite as well, so I brought my towel over and sort of brought it a little more to a fine point. Again, I kind of overloaded it, but you're going to use the very straight edge of your brush, and you can see that paint is really light, so I added some more here, which is why the brush is out of the frame, but I added more in there, more paint, and to make the line a little darker, and you're just going to very lightly, using the vertical edge of that flat brush, kind of in a horizontal line, stroke it down your watercolor paper. And this is just a very small strip of watercolor paper as a sample. And you can get the paint much darker. I'm going to show you that here with the slanted tip flat brush. I didn't get it quite as saturated, but I really got it in the thick paint. See how dark that paint is at the tip there? And the slanted brush actually comes to a really fine point at the highest diagonal edge. So you can use that to create really fine lines. You just have to press very gently and it'll create a fine line. You can see just like there, if you press a little harder, you'll get a wider line. So to keep your really fine lines, you want to just barely be on the tip of the brush there, and it will get you really lovely detail. Okay, so the second brush is a calligraphy brush. You can see how it comes to a really nice fine tip. There you go, can see it a little better. It does, so it is wet. You want to get it nice and wet and then bring it back to a fine tip. Probably not with your fingers, because the more oils from your fingers you get on the brush, you don't want that as much. So maybe blot it on a towel, kind of like I did with that flat brush in the first demo. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here as well. So it's really loaded up with paint, and now you're just kind of going to blot the excess to bring it back to a fine point there. And then again, very barely putting pressure on it, just right on that very fine point, you are going to stroke the brush down the page. And again, the paint is really light. I watered it down a little too much, but if you have the thicker paint that doesn't have as much water in it, there you go. That demonstrates when you press really hard, you can get a thicker line, which is why it's so important to work slowly, stay right on the tip, and you will get nice fine details. You just have to be patient with it and work slowly so you really get the fine lines that you're wanting. Okay, now this is a round brush and is very small. It was a size 1 round. You kind of saw in the handle, it had that number 1 on it. You're gonna get your paint, nice thick paint on there, and you can see it's not as much at a fine point, the bristles anymore. So again, you're gonna use a towel, paper towel to try and shape that brush back into a finer point. And I'll show you what that looks like. You have an extra little strand coming off there. That's okay. Again, you're just gonna barely hover over it, kind of just hover right on the surface and stroke down. I did wind up needing to add more paint. You have to kind of reload the brush pretty regularly with something like this to make sure that it doesn't dry out and become streaky. So that is the round tip brush, very fine tip. And finally, I have our pen and nib here. So it's a very fine point pen nib. And you want to add quite a bit of water to your paint, kind of dip it in there, dip the tip of the nib in there. And then you're just gonna go right on your paper and draw very fine. You don't want to press too hard because your lines will get a little thicker, but if you want, kind of just general lines, you can press a little more. The drawback is it dries out pretty quickly, so I decided to add a lot more water to the paint. You can see here I'm just using the eyedropper to add a bunch of water to that Payne's Gray. Dip in your brush in there. I may have gotten a little bit of thick paint from the bottom on the tip of the pen nib. You can see that right here. It's a little bit of a blot. So you may have to blot some excess off and then kind of press a little harder. And now you can make really fine lines with that pen and nib. And you have a lot of control with it because you don't have to worry about the bristles being so soft and accidentally brushing too much. So you can just kind of go over with that. You'll just have to frequently reload your pen nib with the watercolor. And those are the methods for creating fine lines. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Until my next video, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, God bless, and I'll see you soon.